Hello, this is Carson Winter, and this will be the guide for 2023 Invitational Bee Calculator applications. Let's get started. Okay, problem number 6. Start with the simple ones. 0.0824 divided by a 960. Put it right in your calculator, and you get this. 7. Base 10 logarithmic of the product of these two numbers. Well, the log of these two numbers multiplied. 8. What negative number produces 851 when its reciprocal is squared? Well, basically what it means is that some negative number is taken power to -1 and then to squared to equal 851. And if you go into the reverse, then you will get back to here where it's negative square root of 851 power to -1. And power to -1 means it becomes the reciprocal. Okay, number 9, area of a circle, radius squared times pi, radius is diameter over 2. Put that in EQ solver, get 3.54. 10, a square, you have the total perimeter, a square is 4 equal sides, divide that by 4 and you get one side. 16, the cost of one donut, if a donut doesn't cost that much, well, one donut is 1/12 of a dozen, so 4.08 over 12. You get 0.34 cents, or dollars. 17. The face of a passport photo must be 1 inch long. What amount must the photo be enlarged? If it's only 72 inches, well, in that case, you have to enlarge it by the amount multiplying factor that would make 0.272 be 1, and that is equivalent to the reciprocal of 1 over 0.72. And if you do that, you subtract 1 because you're counting how much is enlarged, not the new percentage of the original face, and you multiply by 100 to make a percent. If you did that, you get an enlargement factor of 38.9%. 18. Gold brick weighs that much. What's its mass in pounds? This is a classic side tools problem. Go to apps, scroll up until you get the side tools. Go to unit converter, mass, so click 7, and then 12.4 kilograms into LBM. Number 19, a right triangle. The area is length times width over 2. Figure out this side by Pythagorean theorem right here. Multiply it by this side and divide by 2 because it's a triangle. And if you do that, you will get 9.43 times 10 power to -2. Okay, 20, area of another triangle. You need length and you need width. So this side right here is going to be equal to tangent opposite over adjacent of this value, 0.564, times the side down here. So 49.6 times tangent of 0.564, then multiply it by that side because you're still multiplying. Because now that basically this is that side over here, and that is this side. Multiply them together, divide by 2, and you get 696. Next, school project. Hayden has to spend $40 on a bag of M&Ms. How many bag cost 1.75? There is a 8.125% sales tax. How many can Hayden buy? Well, the amount each bag costs with that sales tax is going to be equal to that value multiplied by 1 plus the tax, because you have to add 1.75 times 0.8 or 8.125%. And you also have to add it to the original 1.75, so that's how you get this number. And you have to actually round down, my apologies. You have to do that and then round down or divide 40 by that number, figure out how many bags he could buy exact, if you could buy decimal bags, but you can only buy whole bags and you can't go over $40, so you must round down to get 21. 27. Fingernails grow at 1.64 inches per year. Emily trims away 2 millimeters of fingernails when she trims them. How often should she trim them? Well, first you got to figure out how many millimeters her fingernails grow into a year. So go to side tools for that. Apps, side tools, unit converter, length, and convert to this many millimeters growth per year. Then you can figure out how many millimeters grow per day, or how many millimeters her nails grow per day, which is this value. And then you can multiply it by 7 to find out how many they grow per week. And then I guess it would really just make sense for this 2 to be right here. Because in that case, it should work. Yeah. Okay, so if you do that, this value right here will be the millimeters her nails grow in 1 week. However, er, however, she trims her millimeters once they reach 2. So you have to figure out how many weeks they are by reciprocating that, which is why you're dividing it, until you get to 2 millimeters, which is right here. So you get, so there are, yeah, her nails grow 0.798 millimeters per week, and she has to trim them when they reach 2 millimeters, so you divide 2 by that number, and you get the total number of weeks. 28. Tyler finds a hotel room for that much. Hotel later offers an upgrade for additional $18. What is the percent increase? Well, percent increase is new minus original, and new minus original is just going to be the upgraded 10 or $18, and then you have to divide by original. So you have to divide by 129 and multiply it by 100 to turn it into a percent. That equation is new minus original over original. Rectangular solid, well, a rectangular prism is all 3 sides multiplied together, and that is equal to a volume of 7.42. Put that in EQ solver and get X, which is 3.59. Okay, volume of a cone. The volume of a cone is r squared times pi times the height over 3. So this d over 2 is r, d over 2 squared times pi times this d height over 3 is equal to 20.5. Solve for d, and you get 4.28. Facebook post goes viral with views growing exponentially. After 3 hours, there are that many views. How long would it take from the initial posting to get 1 million? Well, for these exponential growths, what you do is you take log base of the original number, and then you do that of the new number that you're wanting to see how long it takes to get there. And then you have to multiply it by how long it took to get to that original base, because log base 3650 of 3650 is 1, and you need to have it be 3 hours instead of just 1 hours. And if you do that, you will get 5.05 hours. 37. How much water is needed to fill a rectangular fish prism with those dimensions? Well, first off, convert all these to inches. So 4 feet goes to 48 inches. Multiply them all together and divide by 231 to convert from cubic inches to gallons. If you do that, you get 37.4. The Great Pyramid of Giza, Egypt, is presently that tall with a square base side dimension of that. What's the visible surface area? Well, the visible surface area is the part of the pyramid that is not the square bottom of it. So it is essentially four equal or congruent triangles, which you have to calculate the area of. Well, the height is you have to imagine that each triangle is basically imagine this extends vertically. Yeah, it's based on this height, that's the hypotenuse of two sides, and the base, which is 756. So you got to figure out the hypotenuse value. So 0.454 squared plus, or no, not actually, my bad, I did have it right. 454 squared plus the full side over 2 squared, which would make sense if you think about how a pyramid would work. If you like draw it out, or view another problem where it is drawn out, you have to square that value, and that will get you this height over here. And then you have your base of 756 right here. And then you divide by 2 because it's the area of a triangle, and multiply it by 4 because there are 4 triangles. And this thing is basically 454, and this side is 756 over 2. 39 is a pretty simple one. This is a right triangle. The hypotenuse of a right triangle inside a circle is always the diameter, which is given to be 2.44. So it is simply 2.44 times sine of 38.3. And if you do that, you get 1.51. 40, a parallelogram. You need to figure out interesting facts about parallelogram. This side is equal to this side, and this side is equal to that side. So this side is 375. Then you can use law of sines, sine of this over that times 738, and sine -1 of the entire thing to solve for this angle x, which because of how parallelograms work is equal to this angle y over here. And then you can use the SAS program, triangle SAS, to solve for AB, plugging in the two sides and the angle of 13.2 plus the x or y that you got. And if you do that, you get 511 as your side length of AB. Okay, 46, this is a proportion. This is a kind of factor or proportion problem. Building materials for a 200 feet squared house cost that much. How much would they need for a 3,700 square feet? So since it's squared, the increase in length is equal to the square, or the multiplied increase in length is equal to the square root of the difference or change in area. Because you can imagine, like, if the side length is increased by 2 times, then the area would be increased by 4 times, and you have to reverse that. That means that everything is going to be, and now because the building materials are based on each of the walls, which are based on the length with a given constant height, you do square root of the difference, and you multiply by your original cost. If you do that, you get this very large number that you should make sure to write the entirety of if you want to get credit, because it is a dollar sign problem. 47. 47, this is your linear regression problem. Elephant weight is linear relative to its age. Well, that makes things easy. At birth, 0 years weighs that much. 10 years weighs that much. 20 years weighs that much. So you simply put all those into stat edit. Go to stat edit, put in all the years into L1, and then all the weights into L2. And if you do that, go to stat calculate linear regression or lin regress, and then store your regression in y1. And if you do that, you can find y1 of 5, and you will get 1.26 times 10 power to 3. 48, put this right into EQ solver, solve for R. Make sure you put a decent guess. In this case, any guess will work. It doesn't matter. It'll get you the answer eventually. 49, volume of a spherical wedge. Well, you can imagine this entire thing, or they're looking for this degree right here. You can imagine this entire circle is made up of a total of 360 degrees. Entire sphere that's being modeled as a circle. So the volume of that spherical wedge right here if it's equal to the volume of the entire sphere over 7, the degrees is 360 degrees over 7. But it is 1/7 of the 360 degrees in the sphere. If you do that, you get 51.4 degrees. 50. In this case, the volume of the cylinder and the volume of the frustum are given to be equal. You are not given a value h, and you're not asked to solve for it, which means the value is irrelevant, and you can assign it to whatever you want. In this case, it's easiest to just make h equal to 1. Then you can do it that. If you do 0.433, you can do the volume of a cylinder, which is radius squared times pi times height. So diameter over 2 is your radius squared times pi times your height of 1. And all that is equal to the area of the frustum, which is 1 radius squared plus the 2 radius multiplied together plus the other radius squared. So this radius over here squared plus this radius over here, which is d over 2, times the radius over here, plus the small radius over here squared, and you have to divide it by 3 and multiply it by the height, which is 2, and then multiply it by pi, because that's how you solve the volume of a frustum. Imagine it as a cone where one of the radiuses is 0, so you still have to divide by 3 and multiply it by 2 pi, because the height is 2. If you do that, you get 158. Now what value of x between there and there, the slope of that sine of x, 2 sine of x equal to 0.3? Well, go to EQ solver. The derivative of 2 sine of x is equal to 0.3 at x equals x, and then you use EQ solver for x. And then if you do that, make sure you have a good guess that's between these two values, so you don't get something like 5 pi over 3 or something weird like that. And if you do that, you will get a value of 1.42. 57, this is going to be a distance problem. You're wanting to find the closest approach. So first off, we need to figure out how far apart they are when both of them move. I guess I'll read out the problem. Joe drives due south to Spring Lake, 22.3 miles away at 65 miles per hour. 10 minutes later, Farrell leaves the Spring Lake, which is where he's going, driving west over here. And you have to figure out what the closest straight line approach is. Well, after 10 minutes, the distance traveled by Joe is 10 over 60 times your speed. So time times your speed is your distance traveled. That means that you have this amount of distance left to travel until he gets to Spring Lake. And he's traveling that way at 65 miles per hour. So you do that squared, because we're making a triangle, which would represent the closest distance approach. So this is Pythagorean theorem. Plus your 55 miles per hour west speed squared. And you're looking for the closest approach, so you're looking when the derivative of these functions is going to be 0. Because if it's the closest approach, both sides make it get long, or I guess the graph of the distance of approach would look like this. And so the derivative is 0 at its closest approach right here. So if you do that, find it when the derivative of that is equal to 0, and then plug x back into this equation, you will get 7.41 miles. Okay, solve 53. Solve for r if c is equal to d, and c, you get all these values. E is here, e is equal to this. Here's the r we're looking for, and c2 is equal to 75. Well, how matrices work is all the values up top are rotated 90 degrees and multiplied by their corresponding value over here. In this case, the 2 would be multiplied by -6, the -2 would be multiplied by 5, and the 4 would be r, and that would get you C1. And C2, in this case, is the same thing, but with these values down here. So -2 times -6 plus 7 times 5 plus 3 times r has to be equal to 75. Solve for r, and you get 9.33. 59. Okay, hatched area is equal to 30. Yeah, so this is a interesting one. You do so you have to figure out the integral from 1 to some unknown z of this function over here minus this function down here, dx, has to be equal to 30, because that represents the area under the curve. It would be the entire thing if you did not have this x over 5, but you got to subtract the area under the curve of this x minus 5 because it is not included. And if you do that, you solve for z. Make sure you put a reasonable guess so it doesn't take forever. This kind of looks like 5 to me. So I put 5, and then after a somewhat short time, it gives me a z value of 3.92. 60 congruent squares. You got it. Okay, this hatched area right here is equal to uh, the is equal to 8.77. As you can see, this area can clearly be extended like this, or that triangle, to make 4 equivalent sections. So this section right here is 1/4 of the triangle, or of the square. So if you multiply that by 4, you get the area of the entire square, and then you can square root that value to get the area, or the length of one side. So if you do that, you will get 5.92 and be able to answer that question. 61. Wendy runs a mile in that time. Wiley runs a mile in that time. They start together. How far apart are they after this amount of time? Well, the distance traveled is equal to the time over the speed of a function. So in this case, if you divide this time by this speed over here that it takes to run a mile, or really it's not dividing by speed, it's dividing by time it takes to do a mile. So it's 45 minutes and 44 seconds, and it does 6 minutes, 53 seconds per mile. That means they can run this time over this time many miles. And you have to do the same thing and subtract you have to do the same thing, figure out how far Wendy has run using that same methodology, and then subtract their distance to create, to get your final answer of 1.3 miles. And now I believe there are two SDs. It's kind of hard to determine why. It's another one of those SD problems that don't really make any sense. But I guess it's just the way it's done, you know? Maybe, how about this? Well, I don't know. But yeah, it is indeed two SDs. Can't tell you why. SDs are kind of complicated and weird sometimes. In general, I assume 3 SDs, but when you subtract things, they like to round lower. So if there's any part where it was ever 2 SDs, or significant digits, it would indeed round down to 2. So 1.3. Next, 62, the overflow problem. The probability of being struck by lightning in a day is that much. What's the probability of being struck 1,000 times in a row? Well, that is going to be very unfortunate for you, but if you do go to overfunction, put this 1 over 182 million as your number and 1,000 as your exponent, it will give you this value from this program right here that we made for specifically for 62. 63, an outfielder throws the ball a horizontal distance of 200 feet. Home plate with a release velocity was the shortest time of flight for the baseball. Now you can the problem implies that the change in y is 0. So what you need to go do is go to our kinematics program. Fortunately, we do have a program for this. It's called symmetric XV. We have x, we have our v, and then the program assumes our change in y is 0. And then if you do that, plug in your values, 200, and make sure to convert your velocity to feet per second. So 82 over 15 times 22 feet per second. That's how you convert miles per hour to feet per second. And then it will get you a final time of 1.71 seconds. 64 hatched area here. Well, the area is equal to the square that would be formed by this side squared minus each of these quarter circles here. So if you visualize that, x squared represents the entire square. Then you're subtracting a radius of x over 2 squared times pi over 4, which is the area of one of these quarter circles. And then there are 4 of these quarter circles, so you multiply it by 4. Set it equal to 77.7, and you get a side length of 19.0. Now, 65. This case, you got first off, what you got to do is you got to figure out the radius of these circles. You know that all three areas are equal. So the area of an equilateral triangle is side squared over 4 times square root of 3, as you can see here. It has to be equal to the area of the circle, r squared times pi. If you do that, you get a radius of, I believe it was around 70, or maybe like 69 or something. And then you have to realize that all of these angles are 30 degrees because this angle right here is 60 degrees, meaning that this entire thing is 120. Or how would, yeah. Yeah, this entire thing is 120. So if you split it in half, like as shown, this angle is 60, this angle is 60. These two are 90 because they're tangent. And therefore these two are 30 degrees, and this one is 30 degrees as well because it forms a right angle, as you can see here. So now that you know this angle is 30 degrees, you can figure out, you can solve for this side of this triangle right here by doing tangent of 30 times your radius you have here. And then it's dual-sided, so you got to do it twice. And then you can add it to the 172 at the bottom to get 246. Okay, that is all the problems on this test. It was probably on the easier side of most tests. If there are any explanations you're confused about, please leave a comment and I will attempt to answer them the best I can. There we go.